Well, hello again, this is Mr. Tom here with another video for you. This week's project is going to be bioluminescence. And it's not really, well, it's sort of a project, but it's actually more of an observation that we're going to be doing. First of all, I'm going to show some pictures. So, I'm sure you've all seen bioluminescence in animals before. We'll talk about some really common insects that you've probably seen out and about around sunset. But let me talk a little bit about what bioluminescence is first, and then I'm going to show you a few examples of different kinds of animals that have bioluminescence. So think of that word bio. Bio means life. Luminescence, think like a light bulb illuminating. So life lighting up is basically what that translates to. So basically what happens is you have two different molecules. So molecules are like very, very tiny particles in your body almost. You have a molecule called a luciferin and a molecule called luciferase. Now those actually combine together. There's an attachment site on the luciferase where the luciferin actually binds to. And when that happens in the presence of oxygen, which of course is in the air, the surrounding air or surrounding water, that's what actually causes that glow. So that's basically how bioluminescence works. And then when animals show bioluminescence, there are basically two main ways they can exhibit that. One is they can actually produce these molecules themselves. And when oxygen reacts with those two molecules, then it lights up. So they actually have the molecules in their bodies that do it. But other animals that bioluminesce actually don't have their own molecules. They don't have their own luciferin or luciferase. But instead, there are bacteria that have those molecules, and the bacteria actually live inside the animals. And those light up, which makes the animal appear to light up. So an example of that would be the anglerfish. This guy here. So this is they live in very, very deep water, very deep ocean. And I'm sure you've heard of them or seen pictures of them. They have this little projection out there above, kind of, you know, where the nose would be. It's actually, it kind of acts like a lure. So what they do to hunt, imagine it's so dark in the deep ocean. I mean, there's little, if any, sunlight that reaches down. So it's actually a real nice advantage if you glow. How this animal uses that to its advantage is it uses it to hunt. What it does, it will kind of sneak up on a little fish, and then it will, the lure will light up, and that's because there are bacteria that actually live in that lure. And those bioluminesce, or they light up. And when that happens, it's actually sort of waving around, kind of like you would with a fishing lure if you're going fishing. And that actually attracts that little fish. Little fish comes to check it out. Oh, maybe it's something to eat. But of course, it's not something to eat. It's something that will eat them. So that's how some animals can actually use bioluminescence to hunt. But that's also an example of bioluminescence occurring because of bacteria that glow, that live inside the animal. Another good example of bioluminescence is the firefly. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about these animals. They are insects, of course. By the way, they are not flies, even though we call them that. They're actually a type of beetle. Beetles have these kind of hard outer wings. Some are very hard. But what's happening with these guys is they're actually producing their own molecules, their own luciferin and luciferase. They don't have bacteria that live within them that produce the light. They actually can produce their own light, which is pretty cool. I'm sure you've all seen fireflies before. Maybe you've gone out fireflying yourself. You've gone out to catch fireflies in a jar, which is actually what I did last night. Okay. So in here, see if I can get a little bit less of a glare going on here. So you can probably see right here, there's one there. I think I have about 15 in here. There's another one. These are fireflies. Again, not actually flies, they're beetles. but they produce their own bioluminescence because they have their own luciferin and luciferase molecules. And again, when that interacts with oxygen, that's what causes that glow. Now, these guys are nocturnal, which means, of course, they're active at night. They're moving around a little bit now. I put them in a really dark room to kind of make them think it was nighttime. They lit up a little bit, but not enough to really show up on video. So unfortunately, I can't show you a video of them glowing, but again, I'm sure you've all seen fireflies before. So this is something you can try on your own. Okay. Now that I talked a little bit about the science of bioluminescence, let me talk to you a little bit about how you go about catching fireflies and also keeping them in a jar if you like. So they start coming out at around sunset. You actually can see them just before sunrise a little bit, but they're more active around sunset. Okay, again, they're nocturnal animals, so you're not likely to find them during the day. During the day, they actually kind of lay low in the grass and vegetation. But right around sunset, they come out. In fact, when I went out last night to collect these, it was pretty much right on time. Right around sunset exactly, they started coming out. First they were slowly coming out of bushes and things, and then in more open areas. So you want to make sure you go to a field or a place where there's a lot of vegetation. Right around sunset time is when you're going to start finding them. And so a way to catch them is, so this is a mason jar. So this is a ring. So these jars come with a lid that has a ring. It also has a flat part. And what I did was I actually just did not use that flat part, that lid at all. And all I did was I just used the ring to screw on this paper towel. The paper towel I use because it has little holes in it so the insects can, get air in there and breathe. But when you go out and when you catch them, I had a really loose lid, bigger than this. So what I do is when I find one is I kind of sneak up on it and then have that lid open real quick and then close it in. Now, of course, the more fireflies you get in there, the more careful you're going to have to be. Now, what do I have in here? I've got some grass, little leaves. I got a, let's see, there we go, a little stick that this guy here is sitting on. I also put in some flowers. So I'm not sure if you can tell this guy right here. So firefly adults actually feed on pollen and nectar. Interesting fact is larvae, they actually feed on other larvae of things like slugs and snails. So they're actually predatory, but the adults, they eat plant juices, so nectar and pollen. So might be a good idea to put in some flowers in there for them. So I did that first before I caught any fireflies. So I made sure as I was putting grass in there, no fireflies would come out. I put the grass in, I put flowers in, some sticks, then I caught the fireflies. When I brought them back inside, what I did was I cut up 2 pieces of sponge, little pieces, you can see them here. I soaked them in sugar water solution. So I took my lid, actually, and I put some sugar in there. Doesn't really take a whole lot, maybe let's say maybe a tablespoon for these 2. You could probably get by with even less than that. But I put some sugar in there, and then I put in some water. Stirred it up a little bit, and then I just dabbed the sponge in there till it soaked up the sugar water. And then I dropped it in the jar, and then I screwed this tight. Now that sugar water gives them another food source. It's kind of like the nectar that they would naturally eat. So there you go. This is how you catch fireflies and how you can store them. Now, if you want to keep them, I recommend letting them, don't keep them any longer than a couple of nights. Okay. Even though you put a food source in there, you do want to let them go. No longer, don't keep them in for more than 2 or 3 days. Yeah, pretty fun to watch. Now, a couple more things. To make this more of an observation experiment. When you're out catching fireflies, you might notice that there are actually different kinds. And there's one that you can actually tell by its pattern of flight that it does. One of the most common fireflies around here, the name is Photinus pyralis. Sorry, I'm having to look at my sheet here. Photinus pyralis, and now its nickname or common name is the Big Dipper. And it's called that because when it flies and flashes, it actually kind of dips, makes a J pattern. It's called a Big Dipper. It's really characteristic of that species. They're very common around here, kind of large, say 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeters long. Okay, pretty large. And then there's another species, and I think I might have a few. Yeah, looks like, I don't know if you could tell, but there's a little one on the bottom here. That's a much smaller species. Now they're only about 5 millimeters to about 1 centimeter long. They're pretty small. And they have a slightly different little flash pattern too. But when you see that J, if you see a dragonfly that has a J shape in its flight, then you know that is the Big Dipper firefly. Okay. And real quick, some people ask, well, how can you tell a male from a female? So when you're out catching them or looking for them, the ones you see in the air, those are going to be the males. Now, what the males are doing when they are making their flashes, they're trying to signal to a female, and the female fireflies are hanging out in vegetation. They're on the grass or maybe leaves and bushes closer to the ground. So what happens is the males are emitting their flash, their bioluminescence, to attract a mate of its same species. Now, each species of firefly has its own particular pattern. There's some that have just really short flickers of light, maybe every second, maybe every couple of seconds. There are actually some that have a really long sustained sort of light pattern. It can even be a little bit different colors too. But when a female is attracted to a male, then she lights her own flash pattern to signal to the male, ah, I see you. It's pretty interesting. All right, well, I hope that was fun. Hope you learned a little bit about how bioluminescence works, and I really hope you try this out for yourself. And I'll see you next week for another video.